Folks, so for some reason the lesson video got corrupted, but we'll just go through it very quickly. So we're looking now at birth control. So it is just different methods used to limit the number of children that are born. It is the same really as contraception in terms of you're just removing the possibility of fertilisation, of conception, and all of these will prevent egg and sperm meeting, and they do it in a number of different ways. So you have mechanical, chemical, surgical and natural contraception, and you just need to know how they work and an example of each. So for your males, it's condoms. There's a female version of condoms. You can have diaphragms and caps. You can also have a thing called an IUD, an intrauterine device, and this is like a spring, and they put that in the uterus and it will stop implantation from occurring. So they are all methods of mostly of preventing egg meeting sperm, whereas the IUD doesn't allow implantation to occur. In terms of chemical, well then it's the pill, and they're a variety of ones. So you can get progesterone only, you can get mix of estrogen and progesterone. You can get this, which is the bar, so it is like very thin, kind of like matches, and they just stick it under your skin and it will release hormone over time. And spermicide is also another chemical method of contraception, so that will kill sperm if it comes in contact with them. In terms of surgical contraception, well then that is obviously, there are extreme cases. In the female, your fallopian tubes can be cut and tied. Similarly in the males, it is the vas deferens of the sperm duct. They are pretty permanent as methods. In the female, the eggs are still releasing, or sorry, ovaries are still being released by the eggs, so IVF would be an option if you decided after having any of these procedures that you wish to get pregnant again. And they can, in some cases, reconnect the sperm duct for the male, or they have been known to actually remove sperm via injection from the testes. In terms of natural contraception, then that is just abstinence, pure and simple. You can monitor it using body temperature. So at ovulation, the body temperature increases. There are now sticks you can get in the pharmacy that you wee on, and that's a better method to indicate ovulation. So you can use it for preventing pregnancy or for trying to get pregnant. And there's also changes in the mucus that's secreted from the cervix at ovulation, and natural family planning methods would use those to do that. So in terms of implantation, is the embedding of, we're going to change the word here to embryo into the lining of the uterus. So up here we have the zygote in the green, and implantation will be, it travels down the fallopian tube into the uterus and it will attach to the endometrium wall. So the language changes. In terms of zygote, we now have an embryo at implantation. So similarly, I'm going to say embryo here at implantation. And just in terms of things we know, usually it's around day 5, but can happen between 6 to 9 days after fertilisation. And as we've just said, your zygote is now an embryo. And once you get to the implantation stage, we'll do it in our next lesson. What you will have at this point is you will have the cells will be clustered like this. It's pretty much a hollow ball, and outside here the membrane is the thing that's going to become your amnion and your placenta, and this part in here is your embryo. So at implantation, the amnion starts to secrete amniotic fluid, and that's going to protect your embryo in the long run. And also after implantation, your placenta now is going to start to form. So just then in terms of IVF, so it is a method of treating infertility, and it can be done in a whole variety of ways. Usually you are removing eggs from the ovary and you're fertilizing them outside the body. That would be in the extreme case. Usually it is only one egg that is produced, but if you're going through IVF cycles, they will give you drugs to stimulate the ovaries to produce up to 20 eggs. So those eggs would be harvested, and then in a petri dish the eggs would be separated out, and one per dish, and they would be mixed with sperm. So the eggs and sperm are mixed together, and you're hoping fertilisation will occur. Now, they will be stored so that if fertilisation does occur, they're going to be okay. So the development will be monitored closely, and they'll be looking for the cells to turn into an embryo. And if that is the case, then the embryo will be placed into the female for implantation. And that usually happens at day 5 after fertilisation. Okay, so that is that. And just in terms of test tube babies, it is a complete headline made by the press, because technically the pregnancy, once fertilisation occurs, the pregnancy continues naturally. In terms of our placenta then, so after implantation, the embryo will form an outer membrane. It's called the chorion, and the chorion will develop into these what are called chorionic villi. So we've seen villi when we did small intestine and absorption. So they're literally these little protrusions, and they will embed into the uterus or into the endometrium. So if this is the endometrium up here, these villi embed into that, and they'll work together to form the placenta. So it's really, really important that the blood of the baby and the blood of the embryo don't mix. So the mother's blood supply is going to be totally separate, as you saw down the bottom here. It's really important because the blood groups mightn't be the same, compatible. So we saw that with the rhesus factor. If the baby is rhesus positive and the mother is rhesus negative, it'll be okay for that pregnancy, but subsequent pregnancies it won't be. The maternal blood pressure is going to be much higher, so that would damage the embryo if the baby got the mother's blood pressure. And it's the embryo and the placenta are connected by the umbilical cord. It has loads of blood vessels, and that will allow blood to circulate between the embryo and between the mother. So in terms of just the placenta, it makes the hormone progesterone. It takes 3 months to fully function, and progesterone maintains pregnancy. Without it, the uterus will start to contract and the female will go into labour. So usually morning sickness will disappear by 3 months because the placenta has kicked in and is now making progesterone, and you no longer feel ill. So this is just a placenta. This is the umbilical cord here, the big white thick cord coming out the top, and you can see it's just essentially a big giant blood clot, but loads of blood vessels in there. And it's going to allow exchange via diffusion of your glucose, your oxygen, carbon dioxide, urea. So some things will go into the baby and some things will come out. There is a crossword on page 227. I won't need to see it. Give it a go. 8 across is a tough one. Let's see what you can do with it. And that is today's lesson.